Hello, everyone. It's March 19th, 2017, and this is your episode 89 of Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me, as usual, are my friends Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Ben Charles. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, good. Hey, Ben, has your faculty recital happened yet?
No, it's on Tuesday, and I'm super ready to go for it.
That little trailer that you did was the best faculty recital advertisement I've ever seen.
So, Julie, because you didn't see that, I have this old video of me just butchering something on a trumpet. So I shared that as a promotion for my faculty recital.
It was way funny. The headline was "Faculty recital on such and such date will be at least this good," and then Ben's just playing, just like the worst trumpet that's ever been heard. All right. Well,
that intentionally play everything out of tune. It's like some of our favorite things to listen to as a family. You know, the guy that plays the flutophone. You know.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It was hilarious. Anyway, way to go, Ben. Hey, you guys. Well, she is a renowned marimba virtuoso and composer. Her cross-stylistic work is comprised of improvisatory sound, world music crossover, as well as contemporary scores for solo marimba, chamber ensemble, choirs, and orchestra. Some CD release titles of hers that you might have heard of include Ecstatic Sunlight, Colors of the Soul, Out of Stillness, and Ask. And there's, of course, so much more to say about Julie Spencer's bio, but I'd rather share just a personal story. And my introduction to meeting her was in 2010, the St. Paul, Minneapolis Marimba Festival that we've talked about before with Fernando Meza. I had just performed this piece called Walking Left-Handed that I composed, which is multi-solo with tape, and it's very theatrical, in the dark, candles. And, it's kind of a, it's a little bit of an out there idea and piece with its theatrics and its visuals and everything and the tape. And it was just a decent run of the piece. And afterwards, I'm backstage, and my teacher, Nancy Zeltzman, comes with Julie side by side. And Nancy kind of had what she has had with some of my pieces before, this look on her face like, that was okay, that was interesting. I don't know if I like that, but Julie had this amazing reaction that no one has ever had, just really, really emotional, and it was one of the strongest, most potent moments in my memory that I've ever had after one of my performances. And then Julie told me what she thought of the piece, and I really got the sense that she understood it on a level that no one else ever had, and that she saw the same things I saw in it, and I really felt this type of some type of kindredness to what she was seeing and how she was interpreting this, because no one had ever said anything of the like and anything of the sort. So that is really, really telling to me about her, and it was very, very personal for me. And you guys, she's a household name in the marimba and the percussion world. So welcome, Julie Spencer. How's it going?
Wow, Case. After that introduction, I'm speechless. As it turned out, when we were doing our tech meeting last night to just set up today, and I brought up that conversation, not knowing that was a special few minutes for you as well, for me, including the performance, which I've never forgotten. And it was a real seminal moment for me yesterday, talking to you about that, realizing that both of us had an experience that was really unforgettable. And hearing you describe it in even more detail now, I'm choking up like I did yesterday when you told me about it. What I wanted to say is that I felt very much the same, the kindred spirit quality that you just described. I think that your composing is a beautiful coalescence of a truly broad perspective on what the meaning of sound is and on what the meaning of experiencing sound can be. And I felt so moved by the obvious connection to how I create and what it is for me to make sounds that other people play, sounds that I play. That what I didn't tell you last night is that very often when I'm getting ready to compose, it's a little embarrassing to tell you this, but I very often put myself back in that concert hall, and I picture the stage with you on it with your piece, because I was transported into a frame of mind in which I felt completely open and safe, which is where all of my music comes from anyway. So right back at you.
Wow, thank you so much. That's so cool. I have editing power on this show, so I'm just
I think we should just wrap it right
clip.
there. That's the end of At Percussion.
Yeah, so you guys just heads up, we're just going to listen to that on repeat for the next 58 minutes. That's so nice, Julie. Thank you so much. It was so funny to have you and Nancy side by side, and Nancy's reaction, her biggest reaction was your reaction, actually, and I thought that was really amazing. And the pairing of you two.
Do you remember what she said, though, when we walked up?
No, not exactly.
Oh, I do. She said, I've been waiting for the two of you to meet for years.
Whoa. She would know that, too. Yeah.
She would, yeah.
Wow. It's great. Well, good on you, good on me, and good on Nancy. That's really great.
Well, Casey got to share his Julie Spencer intro, so I wanted to share mine. So Casey does this talk. He did it when he came to my university in Florida about different levels of musical perception, and sort of the lowest, I don't want to say the lowest, but one of the first levels people get to is the, athletic appeal? Is that what you call it, Casey? So basically, astounding technique will very much impress 16-year-old high school boys. And when I was a 16-year-old high school boy, I was studying with a man named Don Bick, who had studied at Eastman School of Music. And Mr. Bick, I was studying the Creston Concertino with him. And we were talking about two-mallet technique, and there's that windshield wiper part in the first movement where you play octaves. And he said, oh, yeah, there's a marimbist named Julie Spencer that does a lot of two-mallet technique stuff like this. And he told me about how Julie plays the first Mexican dance by Gordon Stout with two mallets, with the left hand going back and forth, as you can imagine, but then splitting the right hand like in sextuplets in between the two notes. And I just couldn't believe that at the time. And then in 2008, I think we determined it was, Julie came to UNT when I was a student, and someone actually asked about that, and she said, that piece isn't in my repertoire right now, but she did have a piece called Almost 5 a.m., which she played, and I'm glad she did, because for me, again, the technical thing was so astounding to me, but then when I saw her play Almost 5 a.m., it was like I completely forgot about the technical thing and was just blown away by that piece. It's just, have you guys heard this piece? It's just
Not
an
that one.
astounding two-mallet piece, and quite difficult, but just, just a showstopper for me. So that was my intro to Julie, and I can still picture that performance to this day. I mean, it was incredible.
Great.
Wow, man. Wow, I get chills. Thanks very much. I don't know what to say. I'm really moved to find out that that something that I did at UNT that day has stayed with you and obviously made you happy.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, great. And we could keep going. Our last guest, Greg Beyer, wanted us to tell you that he would not be a percussionist if not for you. So it goes on and on and on. But we're still doing that compliment you gave me on repeat, so we shouldn't go through all of these. That's none of this is actually going to be heard anyway, because we're just going to listen to that compliment over and over and over.
I would like to, all humor aside, which is really a pity, but all humor aside, just for a moment, Greg, I'd like to say something back about Greg, that he gave me, and speaking about, it has to do also, Ben, with your comment about the piece, Almost 5 a.m. Greg heard me we were both playing at a festival in Warsaw a few years ago, and he heard me play my concerto Waterfalls with an orchestra at the festival. And I do an improvisational cadenza with the concerto, and we talked about it afterward, and he was really happy about that performance, and he said then I really want to do more with you or for you in his capacity with PAS and stuff, and then he asked me to apply for the 2009 PASIC in Indianapolis, and I applied, and he invited me to be one of the composers for the evening concert that was going to be featured at that convention. And at the convention, this is funny circle here, man. I was practicing the piece the week I got to Indianapolis with a few days ahead of time, and I was practicing the piece, and I felt like there was something that needed to happen, that I needed to be more open, that the piece was inviting me to be more of myself than what I had trusted myself to do until that point. So a couple of days before the convention, I decided I was going to sing scat in unison with the solo that I do in Almost 5 a.m. It's a piece. It's published as a written solo, but then in the middle, I basically just transcribed the solo that I improvised on the Ecstatic Sunlight CD. So the written piece that Norsk publishes, it has that improvisation that's published in the middle. But when I perform it, it's always a different improvisation. And I started singing it because Greg Beyer asked me to do that gig, invited me to do that performance. And I just had a feeling that that's something that I should be doing because it really made me happy. And I did it just for myself at home when I was practicing. And then I said to myself, Greg believes in you. He gave you this gig, and you should believe in yourself more. So I decided I was going to sing. And so I scattered, just singing unison like what, what you do when you're by yourself. And it was one of the best performances I've ever given. And I really owe that. I owe Greg a lot to that. I owe Greg a lot for that, but also I owe that piece. And in that way, I'm not surprised, Ben, at what you say about having heard the piece, because every time I play that piece, I feel like it pulls something new out of me that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
And it's,
I remember that performance too, and I remember the piece with the guys wrapped in the different colored cloths. That that whole performance, distinctly, again, sticks out to me. So I was wondering, obviously you've made such an impression on us as young performers, and recently I did a talk where I kind of traced back to some of my teachers and what I had learned from them. So could you tell us about people that you looked to as a student and people that sort of helped in your development as a musician?
It would take the rest of my life to say all the people that I feel indebted to. There are just simply so many. I'll just start, and then you guys stop me so that you have time to play that compliment to you, Casey, enough times. You just stop me when you need to.
All right, no problem.
First of all, I'd like to say the people who inspire me. The people who inspire me are people who make music from their heart. And I don't think of categories in terms of musical categories, in terms of, everything that record companies have made us think about in terms of, I like this kind of music or I like that kind of music. For me, if I hear somebody play music, some of the most inspiring people, I don't even know their names. I've seen them on the street, or I've seen them, I've seen them in all different situations in which people maybe might not even think, oh, that's a musical performance. But just, that's the other thing about the poetry of music. And this goes back to Evelyn Glennie, of course, and John Cage. What on earth is music? What are we talking about when we talk about this classification? That in our lives, is an arbitrary classification that goes back to the education system in the mid 1800s in the United States, in which, you know, categories of learning were separated from each other in order to, well, for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is so that we can specialize. And this degree of specialization is, of course, not without its faults and shortcomings, but the point is, if I listen to John Cage, and if I listen to Evelyn Glennie, and if I listen to my own heart, what I can answer when you ask me who has inspired you in music, what I can answer is simply any person at any moment in my life where I have come in contact with what I deem to be, what I perceive to be a genuine spirit in a moment of sacrificial giving. That's what music is. It's the vibration of being alive in a moment in which we are also experiencing love. And I know a lot of people have, I had a spirited argument once with Michael Udall about this, and he said that, you know, there is art that is purely intellectual. And Michael, if you're listening, forgive me if I've misquoted you. But I believe that that's a fascinating thing to do. And of course, I don't say what isn't music. I'm just trying to say that what is music is so much more than what, frankly, any of us can really absorb. Because if I ask myself, when have I been inspired? The things that come up are things that radiate in the part of me that is the part of me that resonates when I hear a sound that makes my body feel like a piano string with the pedal down. If I see something that is indicative or emotive of what anybody would call a moment of kindness or compassion, that elicits in me, it's like a tabla tone. When I started playing tabla, my teacher Swapan Chowdhury, Gernot and I, my husband, were sitting next to each other, and he said, "So why do you want to play tabla?" And I just looked at him and smiled, and I thought my answer would be completely insufficient. And I said, "Swapanji, I want to play tabla because of the sound." And I'll never forget the smile that crossed his face. And I have taken that with me, because I think that sometimes it really is just that simple. Anything that makes us feel in our bodies as if we are whole, I consider that to be music. There was an ice cream machine in a little town in Indiana that I stopped at with my dad one day. I was doing a science project and I was learning how to make a clock. I got some awards later, but that's not important. The point was, my dad and I stopped and got ice cream, and the sound of this machine was mesmerizing. It had such a gorgeous, I don't know if it was some sort of odd meter, but it was a repeating odd meter. And I just stood there quietly for the longest time, and my dad, who really got me, I mean, he really understood what I was doing. And I started explaining to him excitedly why this machine was this amazing, composition. And he just smiled and listened and said, "Yes, yes, it is." And sometimes I feel like the people who have inspired me the most are the people who have simply said yes, who have simply nodded and looked at me in my moments of utter strangeness and utter vulnerability, because I was thinking about something in a way that I hadn't heard anybody else say, or feeling something that I had never heard anybody else put into words before, that made me feel at the same time very much alone and very much connected with absolutely everything around me. And the people who have just smiled at me in those moments, or the people who have looked me deeply in the eye without any words, those are the people, I mean, gosh, who could I name? I mean, the people who I've seen utterly immersed in this harmony of beauty and soul together. The list would just go on and on if I'm talking about musicians. But, I mean, obviously at the beginning it was my first teachers. Jeff Nearpass was just is a beautiful soul. One of my first teachers in Indianapolis, because he said yes to everything. I said, I want to compose. He said, yes, do it. I said, I want to do pop music and rock music. He said, yes, do it. I said, I want to go to Eastman. He said, yes, do it. And I feel like people like him and Dr. Mueller, who was his teacher, who told me once, never let money stop you from doing something that you have to do. And Gordon Stout and Lee Stevens, I heard them in high school, and I thought, yeah, that's me. That's what it is. Or Joseph Schwantner, who I still have never met, but when I heard his piece Sparrows on the radio, and I was 16 and lying in bed going to sleep, and I thought, that's it. That's just simply it. And I mean, jeepers, Symphony of Psalms, Stravinsky. I mean, I would wake up every morning and put the record on, and I mean, practically wore it out. Or Aaron Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. I mean, things that just made me feel like, made me feel brave. People who do things with fearlessness and make me feel brave. They inspire something in me that has nothing to do with music and has everything to do with music, because music has always been the way for me to face enormous failures and painful moments with resilience that I can only explain as the miracle of the gift of music, which is, in this context, sound and more than sound, that I believe we were made to create. I believe we were made to be instruments. I believe that we are made to be a resonance, that we ourselves, our bodies, our spirits, our words, our actions, are resonances of something that is from somewhere else. And all the people who have inspired me to believe that and to not feel smaller because of that, but rather to feel emboldened. Those are the people who I'm indebted to for all my life. I mean, Nancy Zeltzman is one of those people. People who believe in you at moments when you have trouble believing in yourself. Beverly Johnston. Keiko Abe was the first time I had seen a strong woman doing something that made me think, it doesn't matter if I'm a woman or a man, I can do what I want to do. And she was the first person to really make me think that in terms of marimba. Pai Ching Wu, I just see so much beauty in what she's doing and so much feminist power. It's extremely inspiring to me. I mean, I could go on and on. They're just, I mean, I'm in the JAG right now thinking about women inspirations as well, but I mean, Bobby Hutcherson, huge. Chick Corea, huge. I mean, Airto, listening to things that just made me feel like I was in sync with something in a physical way that made me feel deeply happy, and I didn't understand why. Ndugu Chancellor, I used to transcribe his drum set solos. Peter Erskine, I used to transcribe his drum set solos. Omar Akim was a huge influence on me in high school because of his fluidity, and I just felt like everything the man did was visual poetry. Golly, so many people have inspired me. John Beck at Eastman inspired me by saying that I should just simply listen to the feeling in the middle of myself and trust that. And all of the grad assistants who were at Eastman, so many of them, Christian Shiner McGuire, I mean, just tons of people who just were kind to me. You know, sometimes we don't have to teach somebody something to make an indelible mark in their lives, to have courage, because sometimes the simplest act of kindness is absolutely life-changing. And I feel so inspired that Gordon Stout wrote me back. You know, I was a high school kid and he had no reason to write me back. He wrote me back and I thought, oh my God, I exist. You know, those times in your lives where you feel like until someone sees you, you almost feel like you don't exist. I mean, so many books, so many paintings, so many sculptures, so many moments in nature. I mean, there's a grove of singing pine trees next to my great aunt's house on Merritt Island by the Banana River on the east coast of Florida. And those singing pine trees were like friends to me. And every year when we visited, I would go into the grove and just walk and chant it for an hour. You know, my family would be worried, where were you? And I was with the pine trees. Oh, okay. And you had to walk through the orange grove to get there. So these wafting fragrances of exoticism coming from Indiana. This amazing tree where you could just climb and every branch was as big as a trunk. And I would sit in this tree, and I feel like sometimes we really underestimate what it means to be perfectly still and to drink in the sights and the feelings and the sounds of nature that make us feel connected to a larger resonance than what is humanly produced. So all of the animals that I've known and loved in my life, you know, my cat growing up, my dog growing up, and of course, one of the biggest influences for me is my husband, Gernot Blume. It's such an honor to get to live with someone who inspires you and to get to share my life with someone who, he literally is a poet. I mean, he publishes books of poetry, he writes music, and he listens to my music with all of his heart, and he tells me honestly what moves him, and we make music together. And not saying that he's one of the biggest influences in my life would simply be untrue. I know it sounds corny, but I am one of the luckiest people in all the world, and I'm just so incredibly grateful to get to live with someone who understands me and who makes art with all of his being in a way that that every day I wake up and think, wow. So I don't know. That's a very, very long answer to your question, Ben. I hope it's not too
Very
far
good.
off.
Ben was expecting you to say, you know, that one drum fill in that Dream Theater tune, that lick has really inspired me. That was it. Laurel, what do you have over there for Julie?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is just, thank you, Julie, for your generous openness to just be very honest, and everything you say seems to just radiate with every fiber of your being, and it's very refreshing. And I know one of the things you wanted to do today was to talk about the people who are playing your music this year and recording your music this year.
Laurel, can I stop you for a second?
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. I feel very much the same about you. And yesterday when we were talking in the tech prep for today, when I talked about highly sensitive people and how I've been reading about their research in cognitive psychology, and you had the biggest smile on your face, and you said, yes, Elaine's book, I've read it 4 times. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say, I've been thinking about you since our conversation last night, and it really meant a lot to be able to talk to you about that and to talk about what it means to recognize within ourselves a kind of sensitivity that isn't always valued in Western culture. Certainly outside of the music world, it's not as valued. And to be able to talk to musicians like the 3 of you with trust that I can be so open is just incredibly special. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here talking to you, because I think the more that people get together and talk about what matters to them, the more that whatever resonates within us that we express, that we knowingly express, that we express with the desire to express something, the more powerful that is, and the more potential it has to affect change in our little sphere of influence, which is not to be underestimated. And I really, really love getting to know you through doing this podcast. And I was thinking about you a lot, and I was talking to my family about you and about that book, because my whole family is reading that book. And I just wanted to say thank you for the way that you speak, and I'm sure the way that you make music, which is with an intense, genuine spirit. And I just really love getting to talk to you. And I love the fact that this group conversation is with men and women together. I appreciate the fact that you guys are doing this. I love the way that you're doing the podcasts. And yeah, it's pretty beautiful. And thank you for doing this and putting this out there in the world of percussion and for all the world on the internet. Thank you guys for being people who want to do this kind of thing so that we can all benefit in a more exponential way from what we are experiencing as musicians in the world and how we think about what we do, because that's really what touches the fire in each of us when we understand the harmony between what our biggest passions are and what we do physically with our time.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. I know one of the duos, joint venture, is someone who's performing a new piece of yours, and this is made up of Laurent Varnier and Rachel Zhang, and I went to school with Rachel in Boston, just so everyone knows, and she and I became pretty good friends, and we were neighbors, and she's one of those people that I don't even know how many languages she speaks, you guys, but she's just an easy person to be friends with. And playing with her, marimba duos and things like that was a really special time for me, and I loved to play with her. And so, Julie, will you tell us a little bit about what Rachel and Laurent are doing?
Yeah, they're going to be doing a tour in China, and they're playing with another musician named Sven Hoscheid. And Rachel and Laurent have just been nominated for a really cool International Classic Music Award for their latest CD. And Sven just got a prize at the Trump competition in the Netherlands. And they had, at least some of them had been part of or had heard a piece that I wrote with the National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Composition Grant a few years ago called Soul House. And they were interested in doing one of the movements called Soul House Heel in this trio formation. So the commission was for a new arrangement of this piece that they wanted to take on their tour. And I'm just really thrilled that they wanted to do that and to get to write for them specifically. I've been wanting to write for them. And it was so much fun writing this piece for them.
Wow.
For them.
Yeah. Do you mind telling us about anyone else playing your music, any of the recordings, or what you're doing with your husband?
Yeah. Gosh, where do I start? A wonderful musician who just became a new percussionist with the Shanghai Symphony. His name is Wei Chin Lin. And he commissioned my husband and I, Gernot Bloom, to co-compose a new concerto for him that will feature him on timpani, percussion, and marimba. And that's going to be premiered in Taiwan, probably later this year in the National Symphony Concert Hall by the Taipei Youth Symphony Orchestra. And then he'll be taking that on his tours with other orchestras as well afterward. And Wei Chen, I met him also through Nancy. I've met practically half the people I know in the percussion world through Nancy there in Boston. And he just finished his doctorate there. And just a beautiful player. We're really excited about this. We're using some traditional Taiwanese instruments and some Aboriginal melodies from from just some fantastic old recordings as inspiration for some of these things. Another piece that's going to be premiered in Japan this summer is by a new up-and-coming soloist named Ayami Okamura from Japan, and by her friend and also award-winning percussionist Daniel DeSimone. And Daniel just got the second prize in the audience award at the Trump percussion competition. And Ayami she won the marimba competition at the Italy percussion competition in the marimba category. And I've been really concerned about the direction of politics for a while in America, and I have started writing in the last couple of years. Almost every piece that I write is either titled with or has the theme of some sort of political activism. So the piece that I wrote for Ayami, it's a rock and roll marimba piece. And she'll be playing it with Daniel doing some very cool drumming, I'm sure, with some nice funk beats. And it's called DJ Dog Democracy. And the word democracy is misspelled with the word mock, M-O-C-K, in the middle of the word, meaning that the current administration is making a mockery of democracy. And she's also very excited about this as a person living in the United States, and also very concerned about how she can make her voice heard.
Is that piece published?
My arrangement with Ayami is that she'll have exclusive rights to the performances for the first 2 years, and then it will be published by Norsk Music.
Gotcha, okay.
And so she's going to be playing this in her tour in Japan. Very exciting. I wrote it for her with this rock and roll theme because I was a little bit inspired by Nirvana, and she's a very powerful player, and I wanted to give her a piece where she could just take out all the stops, pull out all the stops, and be this powerful player that she really is. Although she's a very petite, lovely young person, I wanted to give her an opportunity to show the power of her feminism. And she seems pretty happy with the piece. I can't wait to hear her play it. Mm-hmm. Some of the other stuff going on is there's a duo in Japan, the Tanaka duo. Her name is Shiori Tanaka. She's a fabulous woman with a fascinating story. She studied timpani, won a concerto competition at IU as a solo timpanist, and went back to Japan and couldn't get a timpani job. So then she switched to being a marimba virtuoso, and she and her husband have commissioned more works from my husband Gernot and me than any other person. And in fact, they just got an award. They got a prize. There was a concert competition in the city where they live, in Nagoya, for the best concert of the year. And they got a prize in that. And the concert that they put together for this competition, half the concert was commissions that we had written for them. So it was really exciting to see them want to do that. And they've made recordings with our music. And the last piece that we did, we premiered it together on their tour in Germany, was called No More Racism. And he plays trombone, and she's on marimba. My husband is on piano. And it's kind of a rock and roll piece as well. And that hopefully will be published also soon by Norsk. And we've got a quartet with them. It's very exciting to work with people who have just been so encouraging of us and so supportive. And she's also an arranger and composer. They've arranged music of ours for different CDs that they've done. And she's also learning tabla and harp. So she's a kindred spirit to my husband Gernot, who plays a lot of instruments. But going back to the idea of political activism as a composer, there's a piece that Beverly Johnston commissioned. I saw her at that same festival where Casey and I played. And she was doing a piece based on some of the indigenous people in Canada. And it was a theatrical piece. And I was very inspired by that. And I told her, I'd like to write a piece for you. So she commissioned me to write a solo for her that was a theatrical piece. And out of that commission came the piece of mine that seems to be getting the most mileage. It seems to be inspiring quite a few people. And it's a rap song. As far as I know, it's the first rap song for marimba. It's called Everybody Talk About Freedom. And Beverly, actually a grad student of hers at UT there in Toronto, made the premiere. And then Beverly played it. She played it in Japan, and we talked about it because it's basically a revolution song. It's a song about making revolution. And she, at that time, felt that she should take the word revolution out because she was experiencing talking to people about the possibility that might cause problems for her on her programs in China. So at that time, she took the word revolution out. Since then, Mika Stoltzman has been playing it, and she's done some Japanese translations for it. Shiori Tanaka has played it in Japan. And then there's another musician who's based in London, and his name is Leo Liu. And Leo has just taken this piece to heart and almost made it a theme song for things that he's doing. He's been playing it everywhere. And he translated a good portion of Leo translated a good part of the piece into Chinese. And he premiered it in Mexico on the Mexican Independence Day as a way of celebrating, because it talks about freedom. And he played it in the big concert hall there in Mexico City. He's playing it again on another tour in Mexico. And he played it on a national cultural TV program in China with his Chinese translation. And I don't know if he's taking the word revolution out or not, but he's really jamming on this thing. He's got a big tour coming up this summer in China. He's playing a concert in the concert hall in the Forbidden City. And he's playing in some other very large venues. And I'm absolutely thrilled that this piece is now being done in 3 different languages, and that someone like Leo Liu is really using it for the purpose which I mean, so is Beverly, so is Mika. I mean, everybody who plays it seems to have a sense of the political activism that it is. And it seems to be something that inspires people to be brave and do things. And I'm really very happy about that. And I'm very happy for Leo to be taking this and getting the responses that he's getting from it. When Mika plays it, she says that it's just so different than anything else she does, that it's a beautiful experience. So that makes me really happy. And I did it at Nancy Zeltzman's ZMF Festival with a very talented student of hers. And yeah, it's just, anybody can do this piece. You can do it with someone else rapping, with you rapping when you play it. Beverly sings it in this wild, theatrical, operatic voice. And I played it with Aldo Mazza at the Kosa Music Camp and at the Hit Like a Girl and Kosa Festival at New York University. Aldo really digs this piece, and playing it with drum set and marimba with microphone is really a lot of fun, I have to say. I love playing this piece too. So other people who are doing things, Nancy is going to be releasing her next CD, and it's going to have a piece of mine called Chelsea Window, which I'm really excited about because she does a beautiful version of that piece. And she says it's very close to her heart, and I can't wait for that to be released. She's going to release that via her website. Dane Richardson, a percussionist out at Lawrence University, he commissioned me to write a double concerto for marimba and vibraphone, where the vibraphone part can also be played by saxophone, because he works with a really fantastic Italian jazz and classical saxophonist. He premiered it in Croatia with Ivana Bilic, and they recorded it, and he's going to be releasing that on his chamber music CD with the Lawrence University string faculty. So it's for that version is marimba, vibraphone, and string quartet, and that's called Timeless River.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, a lot of great stuff happening. Well, you mentioned Beverly Johnston, and she asked a Facebook question, so I thought I'd shoot that your way. It is simply, and maybe this might need a little explanation for some of us and some of our listeners, but Bev would like to know what keeps you centered. You guys, I know her as Bev, just so you guys know. We're pals.
It's an interesting question for Beverly to ask, because anybody who knows her knows how centered she is. And it's very important to her to be extremely focused at what she does. And she balances that beautifully between her teaching at University of Toronto and her many solo performances, premiering many new works. And it's just an amazing environment that she has there with her husband, Christos, the renowned Greek composer. They just have such a beautiful interaction with each other. I haven't met Christos, but when I was when I was composing the piece for her, Everybody Talk About Freedom, she said that he was giving her very positive feedback about that. And that actually meant a great deal to me because I really respect what he does a lot and the political awareness in what he does. So what keeps me centered, first of all, is being able to laugh at myself. That's a big thing. If I go through a day and I haven't laughed at myself, then something is wrong. Because it's really the best stress coping mechanism, one of the best stress coping mechanisms I know. The other thing is just listening. Listening makes me feel whole. And if I'm in a conversation and I realize that I'm talking more than the other person, it's usually because I've stopped listening, and it usually means that I'm not interacting on an intuitive level, that I'm more focused on my own opinions instead of understanding what someone else is feeling or what their experiences are. So what keeps me centered as a teacher is looking in people's eyes and having a sense that they know I see them. And when Cameron came out with Avatar, you know, it was so beautiful to me. You know, one of the phrases in the film, you know, I see you, really resonated with me because I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. When we visit old people's homes, it's one of the most important things that you can do with people who are very ill or with dementia. You just simply give them absolute, complete attention, or with children, or with people with any kind of handicap in which concentration is affected. With small children, certainly with animals, and certainly in a marriage, and with my own children. I feel that what keeps me absolutely centered is when I have a sense that I'm going outside of myself, which of course is ironic because it really means going inside of myself, to turn on the intuitive antenna, to be able to listen with a part of myself that is not my conscious thought, so that I'm open to being able to notice things, subtle things, that you don't notice if you're focused on what you're saying yourself. So what keeps me centered as a teacher is eye contact, listening, trying to ask questions that I think will help somebody find the answer themselves. It's one of my favorite things, is to ask a question instead of to tell somebody something they should do. And I haven't done this near enough, and I didn't start early enough, but that's what I'm sure focusing on now. And as a performer, what keeps me centered is, oh, this is nice, you'll like this. There's a student of Nancy's, his name is E. And before a concert that I was going to give at the Zeltzman's Festival, ZMF, I was feeling a particularly strong amount of nerves. And I was giving E a lesson, but E gave me a lesson, and I never forgot it. And he said, just imagine that you are surrounded by fluffy, soft wings, and that the love carries you through. And I talked to Gernot before the concert on the phone, and he said, Julie, just forget everything. Just forget everything. And just be the music. And it was, that performance was one of, well, it was a watershed moment for me at the last CMF where I was. And I felt like I'm learning how to center myself. And one of the important things that I'm learning is to be a better listener and to be brave. And one of the things that happened in that concert, in which I felt more centered than I have ever felt in any performance, was that I allowed myself to laugh, because a lot of my music is funny. I mean, like, it's really funny. And so in that performance, I actually was laughing, and people were saying afterwards, "Were you laughing?" And I said, "Yeah, I actually was laughing because it's funny. You know, like you do something in a different way and it surprises you, or when you're improvising, you know, and it's just like, oh, I can't believe that just happened, and it was so beautiful." And the other thing that I did in that performance, in which I felt so centered, was I allowed myself to cry, and I was playing one of my favorite pieces to play, which is a piece called. Actually, Nancy premiered this piece. I wrote it for her. It was called Brothers in Peace, and it's dedicated to Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. And it's about their death, actually, their lives and their deaths. And as I was playing the piece, I was really crying pretty hard. And I wasn't missing notes. And I just thought, I should remember this. It occurred to me I should remember this, because when you're centered, you're able to do things that you just didn't think were possible. And you're able to do them in a way with a depth within yourself that, quite honestly, I haven't often experienced to that extent before. So I'm answering the question, how do you center yourself, or how do you keep centered? I guess what I'm trying to say is that the music does it for me. And that thinking about other people and how I can be a benefit in their lives in some way, if that's possible, that keeps me centered. But basically, I don't know how to center myself. I just know that there are certain thoughts that if I have those thoughts, they help me let the music center me, and they help me let love make me not scared.
You've talked a lot about strong women, and you've named a lot of people like P. Chang and Bev and Nancy. And I know myself growing up listening to marimbas, I always thought it was a woman's instrument. I did, you know. I mean, I think if you start counting, Nane and Nancy and Evelyn, and I mean, you know, it's yourself, and it's great.
I should have said Evelyn sooner. She absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she blew my mind recently. You know, I mean,
she's still blowing my mind. I'm seeing things she's doing, and I just think, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, what's really neat, I mean, what I love, and you know, no matter who you're keeping track of, whether it's comparing Evelyn Glennie now, when I saw her just a few years ago, versus when I was a little kid, you know, whether you compare her back then or to now, it's just amazing to watch these people who you were already amazed by get better. You know, or even people like Ben. Actually, Ben did this live stream. He just ran this Bach Chaconne, and I've always thought Ben is really good. But I saw that and I thought, like, man, Ben, you got even better. It's just cool, you know.
Nice.
It's just a very, very, very cool thing. But I guess speaking of that, you know, speaking of women in percussion, I know we've asked someone else this on the show, but how do you think it's going? Do you think women are well represented and doing well, and are struggling in the same way they used to in the old boys club type way?
Mm-hmm. How do I think it's going? I think marimba is the instrument within percussion that most women have gravitated to, because it was the one in which we received the least resistance. It was the path in which we stepped on the fewest toes, and it was the way in which we could still be perceived publicly as pretty, because a marimba plays melodies. And I think that it is very logical that happened. I think that there's a long way to go for women to have that same kind of acceptance. Such a cute kitty, Laura.
I'm sorry.
Beautiful kitty. I think there's a long way to go in society for women to be. Well, let me just tell you this. I played drums in a couple of different settings. I played drums in a trio with a really great saxophonist named Peter Epstein, and we did a CD together called Incantation. It's one of the favorite stuff that I've done. There's a marimba piece on there called Love. It's just, I could play that all day. It could be like my meditation piece forever. And the way Peter plays, I mean, he was one of my teachers as a fellow student when we were at Cal Arts together. And I played drums. And so we're doing this festival in Warsaw. And this guy comes up to the stage and he says, "Wow, women drummer, go!" And, you know, it was an outdoor festival. He was probably drunk. And at the time, you know, you always think, oh, nice, it's someone who likes what I'm doing. But then, you know, you think about it and you think, right, what are the undertones of what's going on here? And it happened just again at a concert that I played a couple of months ago. And these two older women, you know, very culturally minded, it was in where was this? It was in like a culture center here in Germany. And they said, "It's really great. And when you first came out to play the drums, I thought, wow, can she really play the drums? And then you really did." And these people, they think they're giving you a compliment. And they are so deluded with the patriarchal perspective on gender inequality that it's like to talk about anything with them. It's like talking about people in the United States who don't know they're racist. I mean, who don't know they're overtly racist. I mean, all of us have racist thoughts. All of us have prejudiced tendencies. All of us have misogynist thoughts. It's simply the culture in which we grew up. And to deny that is to deny the fallibility of the human condition. But to ignore the fact that women have a much easier time in keyboard instruments would be to say that, you know, chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream taste the same. You know, they don't taste the same. They're both amazing, but they taste differently. And to say that, oh yes, it's just as fine for a young woman to play drums as to play marimba. Well, go ask Sheila E. how it was for her. You know, go ask Cindy, go ask all these people who know what that's like. But the problem is, women are not immune to the effects of this patriarchal, gender-biased, misogynist thinking. We're not immune to it. I mean, I can cite lots and lots of studies. But the point is, until we wrap our heads around the fact that we are all infected by prejudicial thinking, it will change at a snail's pace. We have to acknowledge that we're all infected by it, because only then can we actually have a conversation. And the problem with the current political climate in America is that the possibility for conversation has ended. The time has expired in which there can be conversations. And now the only options are protests. And I didn't want to see, as a young woman in my 20s, that I had exceptional opportunities as a percussionist. I didn't want to see that, and I didn't want to embrace feminism because I thought, it's kind of like Jane Fonda, you know, she just came out like a couple of weeks ago saying how difficult it was and what she went through as a young actress, and everybody was like, oh my God, she went through this? We thought you were immune to it because, you know, you became a feminist. And she said, oh no, I wasn't a feminist, you know, for decades. And I kind of feel like that's what a lot of us go through. We think, oh, well, it's good for me, so there's no problem. Well, it's hard to look at things that are painful. And when you notice that you are an exception, when you are getting opportunities and you're being handed things for whatever reason, it's harder to be motivated to acknowledge the fact that, oh, wow, there are, you know, for every successful woman playing drums, there are 100 women who play drums and get no notice. And there are 1,000 women, 10,000 girls who would have liked to play drums and got no encouragement. And for all of them, there are another 10,000 girls who wouldn't even consider it. So when you ask, how's it going? It's kind of like asking, well, how's the civil rights movement going? Oh, it's pretty good, thanks. But, you know, it's not over yet.
Sure.
My mother was actually, my mother played French horn in her high school band, and she had taken piano growing up, so she could read music. And she said she always wanted to play the drums, but they said, no, you can read music, so you need to play French horn because we need someone. So there you go right there.
Mm-hmm. I said Casey to just the other day, and I say this with the sensitivity that perhaps some of these people might be listening, although I doubt it. But just in terms of specializing, because I gravitate towards the keyboard instruments as well. And I told Casey the other day, like, I realized, like, I still like drumming. I enjoy practicing it, and I think it's fun. But I remember distinctly, in school being naturally one of the few girls in the studio, and like the guys could they just had better chops than I did, and it got to where it was just such a hassle to deal with them teasing me that I was just like, you know what? I kick your ass on marimba already. I'm just gonna get way better at that.
Laura, that is so typical. That is so typical. And I mean, it's like my friend Shiori in Japan. She had to make a call. She was either going to work as a percussionist or she wasn't. And she wasn't going to work if she kept auditioning as a timpanist, because that just was not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. And the thing is, I didn't see a lot of this because I had extraordinary opportunities working with exceptionally confident young men when I was in high school who were 4 years older, and I was a freshman in high school. And I could outplay them on everything except the drum set. So maybe it worked because I didn't encroach upon that holy, on the holy drum throne. But one of the opportunities that I had was these two seniors, and they invited me to be in a band. And so I wrote music for them. And that was when I started writing rock and roll music, when I was 14 in high school. And I wrote this piece. I hadn't even heard Zappa when I was 14. But I started writing this music that I later found out, oh, wow, that's kind of like what Ruth Underwood was doing. And we played this gig that, in the halftime of the basketball game, 2 drum sets and marimba, with microphones and stuff. And I really didn't understand how extraordinary that was, that these 2 upperclassmen, these very popular guys, were playing with a freshman girl. I didn't understand how much I was being saved from. And because they were seniors, they set the tone for the whole next 4 years, so that the rest of the guys accepted the fact that I was smaller and younger, and I was still going to be the section leader all 4 years. That's just how it was. Well, I mean, after they left. And because of that, I was really saved from a lot of the difficulties that a lot of girls get much younger and much more harshly. But I would like to say one thing. And I bring this up with a caveat that it's something that a lot of women don't want to talk about. I know I referenced Jane Fonda a minute ago. A lot of girls are abused. And it's something that people don't want to talk about. Girls don't want to talk about it. But I can say that I have seen enough girls, students who would whisper things, about something that had happened to them at some point. It's also important to be talking about the fact. And I've also had students who were boys who have been abused. The situation is that sometimes the prejudices, the gender prejudices, come out against girls in that way as well, because men are threatened. And I don't know if you saw the press conference with the current president of the United States and with our German chancellor, Angela Merkel.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
I was sitting and watching it here in Germany was excruciating. She's a physicist. She is one of the she is, as far as I know, the most successful woman leader of a country, certainly the longest. I don't know how long Thatcher was in power, but with her fiasco on the Falkland Islands, I don't really consider her to be a successful, a woman leader because, well, anyway. And to see the fact, to notice the fact that he refused to shake hands with her, he looked at her with disgust, visibly with disgust on his face when he did look at her, made me feel like we are seeing the face of misogyny up close and personal, and that this, just like the instances of abuse and violence against immigrants, violence against ethnic minorities, violence against women, spiked, absolutely spiked the day after the election, and has been continuing to spike since. There was just very quickly, there was a research team that was researching negotiation strategies between men and women. It just happened to be the research project that was going on. And they noticed in their trials immediately following the election that the results changed 150% in a matter of days, or at least weeks, that the results they were getting in the aggressiveness of the male people in the studies who were becoming 150% more aggressive in their negotiation styles with women. It really, it's just one of these very small social indicators that we have a long way to go, and we're going in the wrong direction right now, which is another reason, Casey, when you ask how do I think things are going, I am thrilled and I am so heartened to see that so many men, if I can say this in this way, have become feminists, that so many men are talking about women's rights as human rights. And we marched in Heidelberg at the first Women's March that was the day after the inauguration. And the crowd was equal, men and women, here in Germany, American citizens, expatriates like me, marching side by side, chanting, women's rights are human rights. It was one of the most, I had my children with me, 17 and 15. It was one of the most uplifting experiences of my life. So yes, things are getting better. But the problem is, in the bubble of people for whom it's getting better, like women in percussion, of course it's getting better. Of course it's getting better. But to deny that we are in a bubble after seeing the map, after the election, the blues on the coasts and the red in the middle, would be false hope, because things in general are not going in a direction that will make it better for everybody. It's better for me. It's better for you, Laurel. It's not better if I'm an unwed African-American woman living in a rural town in Texas and need help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
We have to consider the fact that Gandhi took off his suit for a reason. He started wearing the tunic for a reason, because he needed to make it obvious that we stand together or we fall. Yeah,
wonderful.
I'd like to sort of close up the topic with, have you guys seen the Esa-Pekka Salonen 10 Tips to Becoming a Conductor?
No, not yet.
It was an article he published in 2013. And as soon as we started talking about this, I had this thought that came to mind, and I was trying to place it, and I finally figured out this is what it was. And I wanted to read the final point he makes. And you're talking about men are becoming equally as quote-unquote feminist as women. And I love the last point he makes on his list. He says, be a boy or a girl. The gender of a conductor is of no importance anymore. The musical world is perfectly open and willing to embrace female conductors. There is no reason for girls not to go into conducting. The business is ready, and I know from experience there are no reasons why female conductors can't be just as good, if not better than male ones. We are ready.
Amen. Amen.
Sure. If you guys, I know I've mentioned this book before, but Patty Naomi mentions a little bit about just being a girl growing up around and practicing around the guys. And I'm only about halfway through it, but I would really like to get her on the show. And she doesn't address it in a way like, okay, now I'm going to dedicate this whole chapter to the difficulty and struggle of having this gender and this, in trying to make it in this field. But the things she does drop in and say are just really, really good. And
wonderful. I just wrote it down.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's good. It reads real easy, and it's a lot of good stuff there. Well, Ben, let's see. You got your quote, and I think we are probably pretty close to time, but I always try to get as many of our Facebook questions in as possible, just to thank our guests for paying attention and
there are a couple that I would like to answer quickly, and I promise
Great.
more quickly than I did Beverly's question. I'm going to start with John Singer. Jonathan Singer asks, "Are you having fun?" Jonathan was a student of mine when he was very young. He inspired me when he was 13 years old to be a better me. And every time we see each other, Nancy just laughs because he went on to study with Nancy, and he's going to be finishing his doctorate now. And we talk for hours and hours. And he's one of the most biggest-hearted people I know. And John says, "Are you having fun?" And it kind of reminds me of the Star Trek film when the computer asks Spock in his re-education, "How do you feel? How do you feel?" And Spock says, his mother says, "What's wrong, Spock?" And Spock says, "Well, the computer asks, 'How do you feel?' And his mother says, 'Well, yes, because the computer knows in the re-education of your mind that you're half human, and that feelings, you have them because you're half human, because you're my son, and they will surface.'" And so at the end of the film, Spock says, "Tell my mother I'm fine. I feel fine." And Jonathan asking this question, "Are you having fun?" Makes me feel like I want to give a Spock-like answer, because Leonard Nimoy was a huge inspiration to me, the way that he crafted that character. And Gene Roddenberry, the way that he wrote the series, the original TV series. I'm having a blast. I'm having so much fun. And I'm grateful for people like Jonathan Singer who keep it real and who make people answer questions that get really to the heart of it. Another question is Caleb Pickering. "Can you speak to your non-musical artistic endeavors? I've seen some painting, flight projects, and other things on Facebook." Yes, I'm a professional artist. I do exhibits. I do commission work. I do large abstract expressionist paintings. I do light objects with lit frames that change colors. And my style is, I was inspired by the Aboriginal art of Australians as well as Native American art, because I did a lot of trips as a child, and the symbolism means a great deal to me about circles and harmony and unity, and so a lot of my paintings are with dots that represent individuals as well as communities. On a microcosmic level as well as a macrocosmic level, how we interact with each other in much the same way that that our points of light, as we exist in our bodies, interact and are made happy, bouncing off of all the other little molecules that are around us of people that we love and care about. Kramer Smith asks, "What is the music scene like as far as percussion goes in Germany as opposed to the USA?" The percussion scene in Germany is very active. There's an amazing young German woman percussionist. Her name is Vanessa Porter, and her sister. They both actually just also won a competition in Europe recently. And Vanessa premiered a piece of mine called 7 Souls Times a Billion. And she premiered it actually with her sister and a chamber ensemble in Stuttgart. And Stuttgart has a fantastic new music scene, and this festival was really fun to be part of. And so I would say the percussion, and there are tons of percussionists who work and teach here at universities from many different countries. So it's
I was a judge on that competition.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I saw a lot of their recordings, and yeah.
Great. Yeah, Vanessa is super. Their dad was also a drummer, so she's got it coming from many different directions. Matthew Lorick asks, "What ideas do you use when creating a new piece? Is it mostly improvisational?" A lot of my compositions start as improvisations. Sometimes I'll record something and then go back and transcribe it and work on it. Certainly, Almost 5 a.m., that whole composition was, I would say, 2/3 improvised and then transcribed. Sometimes when I compose, I'll wake up in the morning. I very often wake up with ideas after I've been sleeping, after a nap, or in the mornings, and I just hear the stuff better. I hear the music in my head more after I've been asleep. And Hannah Hutchins writes, "To what extent has travel influenced your creative process?" traveling, whether you're working with teachers who have traveled to where you are, like my African teacher, Alfred Ledzepko, or my Tauba teacher, Swapan Chowdhury, or Pandit Rao, my first Tauba teacher, or my gamelan teacher, Ian Yeoman Wenton. The fact that I get to go places and hear how people make music in those places is absolutely thrilling, and it changes me every single time. Every time that I travel somewhere to a different culture or get a chance to work with someone who's come from another culture, I feel enormously opened by that. So yeah, it affects my creative process by making me more humble and realizing how much is going on in the world at this very second that I haven't even heard yet, and that when I do hear these things or see people doing them with such passion and such expertise, I am utterly humbled and inspired to go back and practice and write more.
Great. Hey, thank you for answering all of the questions. This is wonderful. And everyone, thanks so much for joining us on episode, oh my gosh, what was it? 89, I believe. So Laurel and Ben, thanks for joining. And Julie Spencer, it's really an honor and a privilege. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.
Okay, everybody, we will catch you next time. Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right.